Well, welcome and thank you for joining me here on this Monday. I am remote over the next few days up in Pennsylvania, but I appreciate you joining me here. We've got a pair of storms, both of which will be hurricanes in the next day and affecting Bermuda and bringing impacts to the southeastern and east coast of the United States. Fortunately, no major landfall expected as we feared a couple of days ago, as the path has continued to shift offshore due to the fact that strong Hurricane Humberto is going to be picking up Imelda and tugging her away from the East Coast, pulling her away from that landfall and pulling her back out to sea. But that, of course, is not good news for those in Bermuda and still something to watch for those of us on the East Coast, as we will have some impacts. So I'm going to talk about how both of those storms are interacting, what we're seeing today, what to expect, and more in this upcoming video. We're going to get right to it here and taking a look at what's going on across the globe first. And let me make this larger so you all could be able to see it. I guess it's already large, but that's okay. You can see on the graphic here, we've got a lot of areas to watch across the country, or across the world, really. Imelda beginning to strengthen finally, taking her sweet time, but starting to show signs of development. And just to her east is powerful Hurricane Humberto. These two are interacting with each other now. Humberto's been getting closer and closer to Imelda and being the stronger of storms, becoming the dominant of storms. And we do have the remnant low of Gabrielle, which is, believe it or not, now turning down towards Casablanca in Morocco. It's not tropical, it's pretty weak at this point, but amazing that it survived that trek across the Atlantic and still affecting Western Europe and now northwestern portions of Africa. In the Pacific, we're going to say goodbye to Narda here, which is no longer tropical. A couple of disturbances to watch. Neither of these has a great chance of really doing anything to be concerned with, but just a couple of areas to monitor out there. In the Western Pacific, we do have, believe it or not, still Neoguri, a typhoon, which is going to be bringing impacts to the Aleutian Island chain of Alaska. But really, the bigger impact is going to be the rough surf and the recurve of this storm, likely to energize the trough that'll be moving into the United States as we get into later next week and beyond. In the Western Pacific, Bualoy has moved inland, now producing flooding rainfall over Laos, Thailand, Myanmar, Southwest China, and Vietnam. I'm sure has had some damage from this, but the storm is going to be weakening substantially. And we do have a very low chance cyclone forming in southwestern India, bringing heavy rain. Another system to watch for southeastern Asia. It doesn't stop this time of the year out there. Between Guam and the Philippines over the Philippine Sea, this one will head in the general direction of Luzon and could be our next tropical storm and eventually typhoon when we get later into this week and early next week. So we'll talk about that more in coming videos, but we're going to talk about Humberto and Imelda at this point. And you can see the two storms are getting closer and closer now. The difference is basically about 10 degrees of longitude, which is about 650 miles at this point. So they are now interacting with each other. And Imelda is strengthening, now moving north at 8 miles per hour. The pressures come down. The winds are probably closing in on 50 miles per hour. We'll see if we should have an 8 o'clock advisory here in a little bit. Humberto aircraft are finally flying into this and investigating the storm. I'll have that data for you in a little bit. It's moving faster to the northwest at 14 miles per hour, and we do have a tropical storm watch that is now in effect for Bermuda. And at this point, not expected to directly hit Bermuda. It should be far enough offshore to just bring some fringe effects. But the fact that the storm is seeing an eye wall replacement means that when that replacement is finished, we are going to see that wind field expand. And the bigger the storm gets, the more impact it will have on Bermuda, albeit at this point, not a major one. The storm that has the bigger impact on Bermuda down the road, I believe, will be Imelda, which is likely to, once Humberto gets out of the way, strengthen and likely to become our next hurricane and maybe has a chance at becoming a strong hurricane, a category 2 or even a 3 by the time it threatens Bermuda. Here's a look at the satellite image across the Western Atlantic in particular, but across the entire tropics. And really the only two things we got to be concerned with right now are Humberto over here to the southwest of Bermuda right here. And we have Imelda, which is moving through the northwestern Bahamas, passing basically right by the eastern side of Abaco Island. The moisture from that system is getting drawn northward into the Carolinas. We even see high clouds all the way up to Pennsylvania and New Jersey, but the rain shield is going to be primarily focused on this area. Some of that's not really associated with Imelda, but with the trough that is cutting behind Imelda and pulling that moisture northward. But because we have high pressure here in control of the central Atlantic, what that's going to do is draw our storm around it, and that storm is going to take Imelda with it and pull it away as well. And so as a result, we do have a system which looks like it would threaten the coast, but in reality is actually going to pull away and make a hard right and not make any landfall to the United States. Over time, it is something Bermuda is going to have to be watching, and there will be the potential for this to have a hurricane watch for Bermuda, which is already under a tropical storm watch. So kind of a 1-2 punch coming for Bermuda. Elsewhere in the Atlantic, pretty quiet right now. The central Atlantic has some flare-ups. The next wave to watch is taking its time moving off of Africa. Some possibilities down the road, maybe when it gets out into here next weekend or early or this weekend or early next week, about a week from today, of some gradual development. And elsewhere in the Gulf, there is a little bit of a swirl here without any kind of thunderstorm activity that is expected to pivot southwestward. It may be in a more favorable place when we get later into this week for some slow development in the Bay of Campeche or in the southwestern Gulf. But you can see right now it's just a little bit of a swirl, and it's not in a favorable place with some dry air surrounding it for the time being. So you can see the Caribbean is quieting down. We still have some thunderstorm activity to track on the tail end of Imelda up here. And even though we've got southerly flow with our trough here driving this system northward, we do have some northeasterly flow as well in between our two systems, and that is going to pull thunderstorms basically across western Haiti and eastern Cuba during the day today, like they need any more rain at this point. But quiet weather across Puerto Rico. You're getting some subsidence over the eastern Caribbean today, so enjoy it while you can. Fairly quiet weather across the islands, and outside of this weak area of low pressure, which is going to drift southwest, pretty quiet weather across the Gulf region as well as we start this new week. Here's a closer look at what's going on in the Southwest Atlantic, and this is awfully rare. We just don't see two storms of this magnitude this close to each other in this part of the world. I don't know if I can remember a time where this has been the case, at least in recent memory. We've seen storms where there have been two hurricanes, one in the Atlantic and one in the Gulf on the other side of Florida. In fact, that happened if you remember 2023, we had Hurricane Franklin, which was east of the Bahamas, and Hurricane Imelda, which was a Category 4 that hit near Perry, Florida, but Florida separated the two. Now we don't have that separation. We have the storms a little closer, and they are going to interact with each other where, because Imelda has not strengthened as quickly and was slower in coming up north from Cuba than what models showed a couple of days ago, the fact that Humberto is the dominant storm means it will pull Imelda away from the coast, and that is obviously the news we want to hear at this point. And that keeps us from the United States landfall. And we stay at one landfall so far this season and only a tropical storm. And if you remember, that was back around July 4th with Tropical Storm Chantal, which was a bad storm with flooding inland over parts of North Carolina and even South Carolina. You can see Humberto doesn't look quite as nasty on satellite today. It's still a very strong storm, but the eye has filled in. There's a little bit of westerly shear from Imelda as well, but that's not really getting into the system. At this point, what's impacting the system is its own internal process called an eye wall replacement. And as we take a look at the microwave imagery from earlier, you can see concentric eye walls, 1, 2, and really even 3 at this point, meaning this original eye wall here is getting replaced by this bigger eye wall outside here. And that is common in stronger hurricanes. That pretty much happens with every Category 5 you're ever going to see. So it's probably down to a high-end Category 3 at this point. It's still a dangerous storm, but it is not nearly as intense as it was, say, 36 hours ago back on Saturday evening. So what this will do is it will expand the wind field because our new eye wall is going to take over here. And so the winds are going to increase in all quadrants, especially on the east side. And as it expands southeastward, that is something Bermuda is going to need to be watching because the bigger the storm gets, the more wind we're going to be dealing with. If you take a look at our latest satellite image, you can see the eye has obviously warmed at this point. We had an eye temperature, a center temperature of 20 degrees Celsius the other day. Now it's minus 45. So the eye's filled in. We don't have that warming of the eye at this moment. If you look at the visible satellite, you can see as well the bigger eye wall about to take over. See a little bit of dry air now on the northwestern side of the storm as well. I wonder if that's impacting it. It quite possibly could. But I think this storm is done strengthening at this point. You can see on the forecast, expected to weaken to a Category 3 today, and then probably a strong Category 2 sometime tomorrow, and then eventually a Category 1 once it hits the colder water and pulls away from Bermuda. Now, 48 hours, that gets us to Wednesday morning at 5 a.m. That is likely when it makes its closest approach to Bermuda. As the storm grows in size, we are likely to see winds approaching tropical storm force, especially on the northwestern side of the island, and hence that tropical storm watch. It could get upgraded to a tropical storm warning. Complicating things further is that even if it doesn't get upgraded to a tropical storm warning, what may happen is that because of Imelda coming a couple days later, we may have a hurricane watch posted. And so that could be confusing, but in reality, it's two separate storms. But nonetheless, we need to start preparing for the worst here in Bermuda. I don't think we're going to see a direct hit from this particular storm. The one after it is what we do need to be more concerned with. Here's the HWRF model showing the winds are growing in size. This is Bermuda on the right side of the screen over here. Winds over the next 2 days are going to generally spend time in the 20s to low 30s miles per hour. And then you'll see that they are expected to pick up later on Tuesday and gust in the vicinity of 35 to maybe 40 miles per hour. And the gustiest winds will come on Tuesday night as the storm passes about 300 miles to the north and northwest of the island. You can't really see it on here, but 39 miles per hour is the projected wind gust in Hamilton, local time 3 in the morning on Wednesday while folks are asleep. That probably isn't going to be enough to cause power outages, but there will be high surf and there will be some sporadic, leaves and trees that may try to come down. So something to keep in mind there. But the system has some uncertainty once it moves away. Some models show it getting picked up by Imelda, believe it or not. Some models show it getting absorbed in the jet stream. Some show it merging with a large low and blasting Western Europe next weekend. And you can kind of see here when we get to Saturday morning in Western Europe, it's tough to see, but this is western portions of Ireland getting blasted with 50 to 60 mile per hour wind, which in kilometers per hour puts us at about 105 to 110 kilometers per hour. So Western Ireland, if this track holds, could get blasted with some really nasty weather to start the weekend. That's just one model, by the way. So we do have aircraft that are in measuring the winds, and tough to see on this screen here, but you can see our latest pressure measurements are showing a storm that has pressures that are up in the 930s, so not quite as strong as before. The plane just went through the strongest winds on the right side of the center, measuring wind speeds that are likely about 130 to 140 miles per hour. So it's possible it's just a little bit stronger than that 130 mile per hour estimate. And we'll see if that gets updated in the 8 o'clock advisory. The pressure, which you can see in red here, about 939 to 940 millibars. A couple days ago, it was 925. The winds were 160, so it's not that strong, but still a very strong system according to aircraft measurements at this point. And actually, we're going to go back and see if there was, in fact, a new advisory. Okay, here we go, 145, so a little bit stronger. I think it's coming out of that eye wall replacement. Minimum pressure, 938 miles per hour. So we have seen a brief amount of re-intensification, despite the fact that on satellite it doesn't look nearly as beautiful as it did a couple days ago. So what that tells me is that we really should have had aircraft in here on Saturday because the storm was likely stronger than what we had estimated. And I've said this before, I bet you it was 920 millibars and probably 165 to 170 miles per hour at its peak. Because if this is showing 938 and 145, then it likely was more than just barely stronger than that. So anyway, moving on, let's take a look at Imelda, which is moving through the warmest waters of the Southwest Atlantic, getting ready to move close to the Gulf Stream. It will eventually move into some colder water, but you can see the storm is looking better and better and strengthening off those warmer waters just to the east of Grand Abaco near Marsh Harbor here, which we all remember was hit extremely hard with Hurricane Dorian 5 years ago, or 6 years ago in 2019. But you can see that system is beginning to pull away from Abaco. We're still getting some rough weather with it. And we have moisture feeding from the outer bands up into the eastern Carolinas. It's raining all the way up into places like Raleigh. We do have bands of heavy rain just crushing portions of Abaco and certainly portions of Grand Bahama as well near Freeport. And that is out of the northerly flow. And we do see bands of gusty showers as well hitting the southeastern coast of Florida, right between Jupiter, West Palm Beach, and the northern beaches of Broward County. But that's really about as bad as I think it's going to get this morning. You see that winds are actually now up to 50 miles per hour, I believe I just saw. So the storm is strengthening a little bit more, moving a little faster now to the north at 9 miles per hour, and the pressure has dropped to 993 millibars. So expected to be, as you see on the map here, a 60 mile per hour storm after it leaves the Bahamas this afternoon and up to 70 miles per hour tonight. And I would not be shocked if this thing were a hurricane by sunrise tomorrow morning. I know the official forecast doesn't state that, but it's got warm water and now finally getting its core together. At that point, though, it's already stalling and getting ready to make a hard right. This forecast takes it to the east northeast and actually tracks it just to the south of Bermuda, which would be very bad, showing 90-mile-per-hour winds. There will be the potential winds could be a little bit stronger than that. We'll get to that in just a moment. You can see the rain forecast off the southeast coast shows the potential for some slim amounts of flooding somewhere in the Carolinas, but really the worst of this rain is going to stay east of Florida and just across the northwestern Bahamas, with the potential offshore for up to a foot of rainfall between now and Wednesday. Here's a look at the latest water vapor image. You can see the distance between the two storms continues to narrow down, and you can see that there's strong outflow caused by southerly flow aloft, sending that moisture up into the Carolinas and even Virginia. All right, we already took a look at this system, but do want to show you that the model ensembles are fairly well in agreement on this hard right. This trend has continued to make me more and more confident. You can see, unfortunately for Bermuda, a moderately high chance of a track very close to or over the island of Bermuda as we get later into this week, probably on Thursday and Thursday night. After that, we still have some spread closer to Atlantic Canada, perhaps farther to the south over the subtropics of the central Atlantic. That's still to be determined at this point. If you look at the European ensemble, for the majority of our ensemble guidance, does pull it northward a little bit, maybe closer to Atlantic Canada. There's one outlier that stalls this system and says that Humberto will lose its grip on it and then pulls it back towards the Carolinas. But we're seeing fewer and fewer opportunities for something like that to happen. If you take a look at the Google DeepMind, very well clustered, but showing a stronger solution than what the other forecasts are showing, with a 969 millibar storm, which would be well into the category 2 strength and possibly even category 3. So this could be stronger than modeled, which you can see right now. Most of our guidance is high-end category 1. Ignoring these models here, which are not really meant for tropical intensity forecasting. We do have the possibility for a category 2, and I would not be shocked if this number came up towards category 3. That's something we're watching, and here's the reason why. If you look at the GFS, you will see that over these two systems will be a large anticyclone, meaning that there will be outflow channels which allow this system to, both systems really, to strengthen. Now you'll see the wind shear that affects our first system, Humberto, will be first to get to it, whereas Imelda is still waiting for that wind shear when we get to tomorrow. So the wind flow over the system tomorrow is actually going to be favorable, whereas Humberto is likely to weaken. Then when we get into Wednesday, we do see the wind shear picking up. So at that point, the strengthening likely stops. But the fact that there's stronger wind shear from the south and southwest to northeast allows Imelda potentially to enhance its wind speeds and grow in size. And this is what's called diffluence, which allows air to spread out and allows a system like this to actually take advantage of wind shear. Wind shear doesn't always kill storms. Sometimes when it gets into higher latitudes, it actually allows storms to strengthen, at least temporarily. Over time, you can see now the wind shear does increase by Thursday as the system is passing Bermuda, and that will likely weaken the system, and then actually, that will keep a grip on the Western Atlantic for several more days into the following week, because then we'll have strong northwesterly flow, which will kill off any kind of tropical systems at that point. Looking at wind gusts, we expect wind gusts to stay below tropical storm force across the majority of the southeast coast, hence the fact that no more tropical storm warnings in effect. Gusts will get to 50 or 60, though, around the northwestern Bahamas, but you can see the areas that are in darker red and beyond remain well offshore, so that is certainly encouraging news. Waves, though, are going to be quite high, as you can see on the map here, and my mouse died, so I got to do this with my trackpad. You can see a kind of double whammy here for the southeast coast and really even up the east coast when we get into Wednesday and Thursday. Seas could get as high as 15 to 20 feet just offshore. I would say Hatteras and then Cape Cod, Long Island, and then eventually Atlantic Canada midweek to even the second portion of the week. It's going to have some coastal flooding due to this persistent easterly to east northeasterly flow. It really doesn't improve until we get to the weekend, unfortunately. And then really even early next week before we see significant improvement. So really the downside for those of you at the beaches, and this is the cost of living on the coast, is that the seas are going to just batter you throughout the entire week, especially the second half of this week. And that is the problem with having two hurricanes out there. Looking at Atlantic Canada and Europe, you can see things will start getting rough in Nova Scotia Wednesday night, and then Thursday potentially for Newfoundland. And then you see this massive swell hitting Western Europe in two pieces beginning on Friday. Here's piece one, then here's piece two next week, with major seas of over 25 feet, possibly, if this is correct. So we'll be tracking that for you all. Finally, let's take a look at what's potentially going to happen beyond this week. I don't think we see any additional storms this week after Imelda. But next week, we're watching a few areas off the East Coast again. We're watching this area, which could become Jerry, but the Gulf could start to pick things up over time. The following week, we are definitely going to have to be on alert. Florida, the southwestern Atlantic, the Western Caribbean, the Southern Gulf. This is certainly going to be a more becoming a pattern to see tropical activity, and it's too soon to obviously pinpoint where storm's going to pop up and where it's going to go and how strong it would be. But this is a pattern we need to be watching for the second, third, fourth weeks of October. The next names on the list are Jerry and Karen and Lorenzo and Melissa and Nestor. And I do think we'll see those storms in the month of October. And we may see one or two more still off the coast of Africa. We'll probably see one or two in the Southwest Atlantic. We'll probably see a couple in the Caribbean and Gulf. And as far as impacts to land go, I think Florida is an area that still should not let their guard down in October. South Florida, the Gulf Coast, Mexico, the Caribbean, Bahamas, Bermuda even, and even the East Coast of the United States, all these areas I still think could be impacted this season with a system. We're not finished after these two storms, even though they fortunately have spared landfalls on the East Coast. Taking a look at Google DeepMind real quick, you will see, let me move this down just a bit for you all here. You will see low potential for anything through this week, but early next week, we may see something subtropical try to form in here in the southwestern Atlantic. We're also going to monitor a wave that moves across the central Atlantic, which may have some chance to develop. And then the Central American gyre could try to spin something up near the Yucatan or in the southwestern Gulf. And that would not be probably until the middle of next week, but we've got some time. So we're going to be watching that. Looking at the European AI, we see quieter weather ahead until we get into next week. And then we're watching the Gulf, we're watching the Southwest Atlantic, and we're watching the Yucatan channel like a hawk, because I do think next week we may eventually start to see some development again. We also have to watch this wave coming off of Africa for some eventual development. You can see there's some clustering, but it's the same area where Aaron went and the same area where Humberto went and all of the other majors just to the north of the islands and in the general direction of Bermuda. So more to come on those. If you take a look at the GFS model as we get on into next week, you're going to start to see things starting to get spicier both east of the islands and over the southwestern Gulf. Again, this is a longer range forecast, so at this point, a lot of uncertainty, but a lot more rising air over the basin closer to land when we get to the middle of October. So obviously, we need to be mindful of that. Looking at the Canadian, we've seen some occasional solutions which show development over the southwestern Gulf or over the northwestern portions of the Caribbean, and even a little bit of development off the southeastern coast, although this is initially not tropical. So we'll be keeping an eye on that. And then the European AI does also indicate rising motion over the northwestern Caribbean and potentially a storm east of the islands here later next week. And maybe something that tries to cross over from Mexico, like we saw during Hurricane Milton last year. So, again, it's too early to get specific on that, but that's what I'll be watching in the coming days. So, I appreciate everybody for joining me here on this Monday. I'll be back tomorrow. I do want to close out with a word of God for the people of God. This is why I do what I do every day because Christ and God have called me to do this, called to make a difference, but called to share the gospel with others. In Paul's first letter to Timothy, he writes, "However, for this reason I obtained mercy, that in me first Jesus Christ might show all long suffering as a pattern to those who are going to believe on him for everlasting life." And Jesus Christ gives mercy to all who choose to follow God through him. It is a long suffering process to follow Jesus. But since I became a Christian 13 years ago, I've realized that it is worth it because the battle is not the battle is not picking Jesus Christ to be my savior. That was easy. Yes, I had to make that decision, but the battle is now continuing that journey and continuing and continuing and continuing when all others want to doubt what will happen next. All others around me, I say all others. I know I have plenty of Christians in my life that I'm very close with, people that I'm family and friends with, but it is difficult seeing everything going on in life, things that we all struggle with. But at the end of our life, that is just the beginning to what ends up being eternity in heaven with Jesus Christ. And that is the good news that I wanted to share with you today. And that is the reason I do what I do every day. It is to share the gospel with you because it matters. We want to keep the main thing, and give God all the honor and glory for everything that we do because it is worth it. So I thank you all for joining me today. And don't forget, if you haven't already, to hit that subscribe button. I appreciate you participating. And thanks for being patient with me as I travel here this week. We'll be back tomorrow morning. Thank you.